Hi. Didn't expect so many people to be here, but okay. So I haven't done one of these before, so I'm just going to talk you through. This can look like holiday photos, but I'll talk you through how the idea sort of came about. So I assisted a bunch of filmmakers and photographers for about 5 years, and basically watched them like freak out and panic about a lot of their ideas not getting made. So when I sort of like went on my own, I basically like continued that same process, and funnily enough, I wasn't getting anything made. So I decided to like use like my knowledge and use everything I'd done working for them to try and figure out how I'd be able to, I don't know, like hack the system, lol. But basically, most of my ideas were getting rejected because they didn't necessarily fit into what people thought would be like a story that was like valued or a story that was relevant. And most of my ideas, they probably thought there weren't people who would care so much about them. But I kind of was pretty steadfast to what I was wanting to do and what sort of stories I wanted to tell. I grew up in Nigeria and also here. So in both places, in Nigeria, I'm a bit of an alien, and here likewise. So I figured I wanted to tell those stories in the middle. So I basically took jobs that I hated for other people in order to save money. I worked for a company called Dailymotion, which are like the second biggest company after YouTube, and just kind of like figured out how the internet works in regards to like ad revenue and like video editorials and stuff like that, just kind of like amassing information the whole time. So what I did is I made a bunch of savings. My mum hates this story, but I basically spent my savings shooting videos for people I really liked and artists I really liked. I just call them up, they send me music, I call them up and be like, yo, I want to make you a video. Obviously they didn't have money to make it, so they'd be like, yeah, cool. And I'd be like, the only thing is you can't tell me anything to do. Like, that's just going to be the trade-off, which isn't actually what happened. We basically worked together on most things. But I would see the same thing reflected in my friends, a lot of them stylists, makeup artists, graphic designers. They would, you know, not really be enjoying what they're doing. So I would be like, look, I have a little bit of money, I'll pay you probably like way less than you're actually worth, but at least we'd all have ownership of this project. So yeah, I would commission myself. So a lot of this footage is the second commission I ever did for myself, which was going to northern Nigeria to film this festival in the north. The final product isn't actually out yet, but I thought it'd be nice to show you because no one else is going to see it. So I would go to Nigeria, and at that point I was doing what I was doing here, just like acquiring a team. I was acquiring DOPs, a producer, photographers, set designers, and just meeting people the whole time, like with no real inclination of like when we'd ever do something that I could like pay people properly from, but it was just like continuing the conversation of like, I really like your work. So yeah, at the back end of this, after my first commission, I got a bunch of work, which I was like really happy about, but it kind of was catch-22 because I got this work and I would just say yes to everything because I'd be like, cool, it's money, I'm gonna do it. But actually a lot of the time I didn't really enjoy it, and they weren't necessarily investing in me. They just wanted someone who could just film something like, you know, and not make it look like it came out of a toaster. So basically, I didn't have time to actually edit this. I had so much footage, so after doing a lot of work, I booked myself a trip, a vacation to go to Los Angeles for like 2 months, because I knew a few people there, enough so I wouldn't be distracted and drunk all the time. And then, whilst out there, I just sort of hung out with a few people I know, and luckily enough, met the image directors at Kenzo. So I'm at a meeting, not a meeting, I'm at like a dinner party, and they're like asking me about my work, and I'm like, stop talking to me, I'm not very good at what I'm doing at this point. But they really pressed, and had really good friends who also really pressed the agenda. So they basically told me to submit a treatment for something they had. I was pretty terrified. I was like, they're just gonna think this is a bit of a joke. And then sent it out to them, but as part of it, they insisted that I have a photographer and video, so it's 50-50. So as part of my process as well, I just write to people on Instagram. Like, if I like your work, I just contact you straight away and be like, I really like your work, love to work with you someday. Yeah, I really like to work with you someday, not really knowing when that might ever happen or if it will ever happen, but I like to sow a seed, that's what I call it. Just sow a seed in people's minds so that they know who I am and they're aware of my work if something were to ever come in rotation. So, yeah. So basically for the Kenzo thing, I had pitched a couple of music videos for an artist, and they, funnily enough, rejected my ideas again. So I just recycled one idea because I thought it really fit in the theme of what Kenzo were looking for. Changed a few images around, changed a few words around, and just to make it more seamless. And yeah, they emailed me back asking one question, because it was about a beauty pageant, and they were like, beauty pageants are quite problematic. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I'm doing like an anti-beauty pageant, so they were really cool about it. So yeah, this was the treatment that actually got rejected, and you'll see how some of this feeds into the final work. Okay, so where am I? Okay, so at this point, I'd shot in Nigeria a couple of times. I'd built a team. I actually planned to do the Kenzo thing in London, but the photographer, this wonderful photographer called Ruth Ossai, she encouraged me. She asked where I'd love to do it, and I was like, Nigeria. So she said, insist to Kenzo, that's where we shoot it. I thought they wouldn't go for it, and they kind of didn't, but they were like, you can do it, but we can't come with you. At which point I was like, that sounds great, yeah, let's do it. My brother's a director and producer in Nigeria as well, so he produced it on the Nigerian end. I have a friend of mine who produces here, and she helped me with the post-production and flights and all that stuff. I knew knowledge of the landscape because I grew up there for a period of time and I go back quite regularly, so nothing was really daunting. And at the same time, I know just how Nigeria is. Unfortunately, we have loads of power cuts, it's really hot. Everyone's very, very chilled about working. So I was just kind of ready for it. I knew that we'd need a certain amount of time. Everyone would need to be really relaxed and just not panic at any point, other than myself, who was internally panicking the whole time. Speaking to Ruth, I really love her work because she's very conscious of how she captures her subjects. She's very conscious of the work she creates be very sustainable, and that's something I admire and try to integrate in my work as well. So once we planned it, she really took the lead on a lot of it. When we got there, we flew out on a Saturday, and on the Sunday morning, she was like, we need to speak to all the elders in the village about what we're gonna do. I just thought she was like, yeah, we're just gonna invite them around, give them some food, and it'll be cute or whatever. So we went to church the next morning. You'll see some pictures in a minute. And she, in the middle of a church service, got up and was like, here's the filmmaker, he's gonna talk to all of you. Needless to say, I wasn't really prepared, and no one really understood that much English, so it kind of was a bit of a faultless exercise. But just doing that process helped them realize that we were trying to include them in what we were doing. We went to a local secondary school, and we told the headmistress what we were doing. We went to the markets, we told everyone what we were doing. We actually hired a few local people as well to be our assistants and fixers. We ensured everyone get paid, so we negotiated rates. That's what we did in the first week we were there. And then the rest of the crew came a few days later. One sec. Yeah, so we just made sure that it was as sustainable as possible, ensuring everyone signed releases and everyone understood what those releases were about. And also we did a lot of research and spoke to people there in regards to how best to show their community, as opposed to just coming and being oh, this is what we want to do because it will look cool. We just sort of reacted. Nsukka, where we shot, is the only place in Nigeria where women can ride these motorbikes as part of business. I mean, they can ride it anyways, but the traders there are really mixed and open. So we just sort of factor that into the video as well. Maybe we should run through these a little quicker. Yeah, there's loads of images. So yeah, this was kind of like, this is like the first date. He was one of our assistants in the end. And that is Ruth getting mobbed by a bunch of schoolgirls. That's me, like, posing, as I tend to do. And then just like location scouting and stuff like that. Yeah, put loads of cute images. Yeah, that was my brother and the team when they all arrived. And then, yeah, this is us trying to do like camera tests in pitch black, basically, because there was no electricity. And then all my wonderful models. Okay, so yeah, I guess it gets to the outcome. So Kenzo had not really seen any images of what we'd done. I heard at the end, it's like the first time they've ever actually done that, which was quite cool, but obviously like equally terrifying for them. But because I had loads of experience and I pretty much knew what I was doing and trusted everyone I was with, everyone like went above and beyond because they felt like a sense of ownership in regards to what we were doing. I guess it's probably quite rare that a brand will give you that much creative freedom and just necessarily trust you. But the moral of the story is the fact that I commissioned myself and was be able to produce work in the manner in which I thought I'm fully capable of doing kind of gave them the trust to know that actually, yeah, there's like a lot of research and a lot of process has gone into this. And actually, I effectively produced the video myself, so they didn't really have to take on a lot of risk in doing that. Yeah, and I guess initially the video was just to be like one of their smaller advertorials to go out on their YouTube. But when they received it, I guess it kind of overwhelmed them. I'm gonna go back a second because the video is gonna play in. Kind of overwhelmed them, so they decided to make a big song and dance about it. I'm gonna keep going back. Big song and dance about it. But yeah, so moral of the story is just like trust yourself, trust the people around you, utilize them as best as possible. Don't talk too long on stage, and yeah, here's the video.